Hello, Ron O'Brien. Today I'm reacting to How Can We Protect Dharma? I saw this and I was a little confused. What do you mean by protect Dharma? Let me give you my understanding of Dharma. From the few videos, it seems like perhaps there is quite a bit of definitions to it, a variety of definitions. The one I remember initially is essentially duty. Your duty as whatever you are, whatever title you are. As king, your duty as king. As father, your duty as father, mother, etc. And so, how do you protect your duty? And I was like, what do you mean? How do you protect duty? You can't. There's no protecting that needs to be done, right? So that's what's going on in my mind, and that's the reason why I chose it. This is pretty very short, actually. But it caught my attention just because it says protect duty, at least as far as my definition is known. Now, there is a bit of other definitions. I can't quite remember them just because they are different from what I've heard, and I've not heard that definition very much. Um, and they didn't quite define it per se, and they didn't quite, how do I say, didn't quite define it, and hasn't been said very much. So that's the reason why Dharma as duty has been said a lot in my reaction to these videos. So that's how I understand it. So let's go get started.
Give them a non-violent, robust response. That's what your tradition will tell you. Not need to be equally violent towards them, but at the same time now, you see, this is a question that touches me because, in fact, this is what I was talking to Nishit before we started the program. I say, you've been sending out millions of WhatsApp on a daily basis, is entering India, we know for sure. And yet, somehow it's not stirring up our people well enough to stir up and say, let us do something about our tradition. The only way you can protect yourself, your tradition, is to make sure these wonderful ideas, a deeper vision of our tradition is not external. We're not asking for anything. There's no gimmick being sold. There's no donation being asked for. Simply a clear, structured vision of your tradition in a rational format suited to our modern times. Can you make sure this message enters the Indian subcontinent? If it doesn't enter, we are talking to, we are hitting our head on a brick wall. Please help us. The only way this tradition can be protected, promoted, is to just simple thing, just offer this very clear, structured, rational, contemporary vision of your tradition to our own people. Our own people are struggling. They are kind of wallowing in, in ignorance and wallowing in this superstitious way of life. And so, oh, the Shani Devi is looking, oh, I must go pray to Shani. You see, this is pure superstition. Grow out, my friend, grow up.
I'm gonna listen up one more time. Since this is really short, I grasped it. He was going pretty quick. Let's listen one more time. One more time.
Give them a non-violent, robust response. That's what your tradition will tell you. Not need to be equally violent towards them, but at the same time now, you see, this is a question that touches me because, in fact, this is what I was talking to Nishit before we started the program.
It was really weird. That very intro is just about non-violent or less violent. It's like, whoa, why are we getting into that right away? It almost seems separate from this thing, but at the same time related, but just missing that front piece. It's like, where is this violence coming from?
I say, you've been sending out millions of WhatsApp on a daily basis, is entering India, we know for sure. And yet, somehow it's not stirring up our people well enough to stir up and say, let us do something about our tradition. The only way you can protect yourself, your tradition, is to make sure these wonderful ideas, a deeper vision of our tradition is not external. We're not asking for anything. There's no gimmick being sold. There's no donation being asked for. Simply a clear, structured vision of your tradition in a rational format suited to our modern times. Can you make sure this message enters the Indian subcontinent? If it doesn't enter, we are talking to, we are hitting our head on a brick wall. Please help us. The only way this tradition can be protected, promoted, is to just simple thing, just offer this very clear, structured, rational, contemporary vision of your tradition to our own people. Our own people are struggling. They are kind of wallowing in, in ignorance and wallowing in this superstitious way of life. And so, oh, the Shani Devi is looking, oh, I must go pray to Shani. You see, this is pure superstition. Grow out, my friend, grow up. talking to, we're hitting our head when it enters the Indian subcontinent. Can you make sure?
Can you make sure this message enters the Indian subcontinent? I'm not sure who needs to send this message to the Indian subcontinent. I don't know if Lakhani is trying to say, hey, can you send this message that I'm about to say to the Indian subcontinent? Or is there, because it seems like he's talking about let's start with something about our tradition. It's talking about our tradition. Then all of a sudden, can you send this to the Indian subcontinent? It's like, well, you're part of it. You're making it seem like you're external. Or you're talking about something external. The only way you can protect your tradition is to make sure. This one from the DSD provisions already no external. Okay, so maybe like, why is it sounding like? Can you send this external message to the Indian subcontinent? I have a feeling perhaps this is him making the statement and wanting it to be sent to the Indian subcontinent. Okay, that makes sense because we have this external thing saying about this is what the way, that's what your tradition will tell you, not to need to be equally violent towards them. So who's them? But in the same time, or same time, no. It is the question that touched me because, in fact, this is what I was talking about before we started the program. On a daily basis, in entering India, we know for sure, and yet somehow he's not studying of our people. So again, a lot of like there's internal, external things going on here, and I don't know who he's talking about as we progress. Clearly, there's a longer video here that's missing, and I'm trying to follow along well enough to start up and say, let's do something about our tradition. So whenever he says our, I'm assuming he's talking about his tradition in terms of the Indian tradition, Hinduism, I believe.
Of WhatsApp on a daily basis is entering India with no.
Okay, and then it says, I see you've been sending out millions of WhatsApp um, on a daily basis in entering India. So what does that mean? I see you've been sending out millions of WhatsApp.
Before we started the program, I say you've been sending out millions of WhatsApp on a daily basis is entering India, we know for sure. And yet, somehow he's not stirring up our people well enough to stir up and say, let us do something about our tradition. The only way you can protect yourself, your tradition, is to make sure these wonderful ideas, a deeper vision of our tradition.
So who is he here? Is he talking about Lakhani himself? As it almost seems like maybe there are some people in India thinks that Lakhani is criticizing his people. I mean, he does, but I think there's some validation to it. I mean, obviously, every country has criticism, genuine criticisms to themselves. No country is perfect, and we have to be able to accept criticism, constructive criticism, of course, to make our countries better. So this is kind of confusing. I don't know if he's talking about himself, someone's talking about him, or he's talking about an external person. Is he included in the Indian people, or is he kind of separating himself temporarily in this vision because he is in, I believe, in Britain or in England or the UK, somewhere over there at the time, I think. And so I understand now how can we protect Dharma, but he's talking about Dharma as in the traditions. I don't know, is that Dharma also tradition? I always thought it to be, again, like I said earlier, duty.
Can you make sure this message enters the Indian subcontinent? If it doesn't enter, we are talking to we are hitting our head on a brick wall. Please help us. The only way this tradition can be protected, promoted, is to just simple thing. Just offer this very clear, structured, rational, contemporary vision of your tradition to our own.
It says, it says help us, and then your tradition. Like, wait, I thought you were talking about our tradition help us, so therefore it would be our tradition. But then all of a sudden it says your tradition. Help us, your tradition. Unless it's saying help us understand your tradition, but it's not that, I don't believe. Let's go listen to that again. I'm sorry, I'm going rewind back. I'm trying to understand this. Hopefully, you can help
Indian
me.
subcontinent. If he enters the Indian subcontinent, if he doesn't enter, we are talking to
We, okay. If he doesn't enter, so there's a third person. We, as in him, and I'm assuming Indian people.
we're hitting our head on a brick wall. Please help us.
Help us. So again, him and the Indian people.
The only way this tradition can be protected.
The, the only way this tradition can be protected, so I'm assuming it's again him and the Indian people's tradition.
Protected, promoted, is to just simple thing, just offer this very clear, structured, rational, contemporary vision of your tradition to our own people.
Now it goes to your tradition to our people. And this entire time, I keep thinking that whenever it says our, or we, it's him and Indian people. Now it's saying your tradition, whatever tradition you have, and to our people, which is the Indian people. Which then, so I'm not sure what he's trying to say here. Um,
Our own people are struggling. They are
so again, he says our people are struggling. So again, is he talking about a different group of people? I'm sorry, I'm a little bit lost in this one. I understand, though I do understand what he means by protecting Dharma here, even though I'm confused on who is he trying to protect. But I do understand essentially in terms of this video, what Dharma is tradition or culture, or tradition and culture, and to essentially to make the tradition or culture itself very easily understandable, so that people are not in ignorance or wallowing in
wallowing in ignorance and wallowing in this superstitious way of life.
because the tradition itself is kind of complicated. It does have, whenever it says superstitious, it talks about, I know, maybe perhaps a little bit more of an extreme in terms of religion, perhaps, that, you have to do all these, I don't know, um, well, he says it here actually.
Oh, the Shani Devi is looking. Oh, I must go pray to
Prerequisites, meaning do all these things before I get the blessings or whatever. And these are beyond superstitions. So that he says, make the tradition, our tradition, simple to understand, so that our people are not wallowing in ignorance or wallowing in superstition, because the tradition is overly complicated. There's so many paths, so many ways to do it, that it's kind of confusing and people are not getting on board, perhaps. If it's a little bit simplified to a few, like say 4 main paths, which branches out to many paths. So it's like, hey, these are the 4 main paths you can choose. Again, like karma, bhakti, raja, and jnana yoga. The 4 main paths. And if those are the 4 main paths, you pick the one that you are favorite of, whether you want to be, your actions, or your worship, or your meditation, or your, thoughts. Well, not thoughts really, but just thinking of who you are. Deep thoughts, I guess. Not necessarily meditation format, though. Meditation can be thought of deep thinking, but meditation is more of clearing your mind. It's very, I think Raja and Jnana are kind of similar in a sense, because Jnana, you're thinking of what you're not, or who's not, what you are not exactly. And then in meditation, you're essentially removing everything to see who you are. And then Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga are very similar in my book. Obviously, one is actions through God, worship of God. The other one's just through actions alone and thoughts. So, anyways, that's my assumption in this one. How to protect this by simplifying the traditions, so that people are not like picking up traditions and making it up in some sense. Like, it seems confusing, but let's see. Let's with that in mind, let's hear what it has to say.
we are hitting our head on a brick wall. Please help us. The only way this tradition can be protected, promoted, is to just simple thing, just offer this very clear, structured, rational, contemporary vision of your tradition to our own people. Our own people are struggling. They are kind of wallowing in, in ignorance and wallowing in this superstitious way of life. And so, oh, the Shani Devi is looking, oh, I must go pray to Shani. This is pure superstition. Grow out, my friend, grow out.
Grow out, my friend. Grow out of the superstition and grow up and take responsibility. I'm guessing. Grow up in Western language, or at least in American language, means to be responsible. Grow up means stop being a child. So that's my assumption of what he means by this. Is to I guess maybe in India, perhaps the original tradition in terms of I'll just call it Hinduism is kind of dying out, perhaps to other religions. I mean, it's kind of the same thing in terms of Christianity in the United States. It's slowly dying just because, it's so strict and so, well, strict really. And I think what Lakhani here will say in terms, I mean, whatever he says here, I would think would work if you simplify it and not so be you have to do this, you have to do that, and you have to do all this because people are so busy and they're not wanting to do it. They won't follow that tradition. There are some people that will, obviously, but then to the masses, it's probably not. So that's my assumption in this video. Now that I watched it again, it kind of said my thoughts and hopefully it makes sense. So that's my reaction to this video. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up the sound down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.